Hi there, I'm Jack Canfield, and I'm really excited to share this masterclass with you today. It's called Getting into the Gap, the secret source of your personal power. And it's going to introduce you to a very simple but powerful 5-step process that you can use to literally transform your life in minutes. And not only that, you're going to get the chance to use this process today during our next 45 minutes together to solve a specific challenge or problem you're currently dealing with in your life. So I want you to think of something that's been triggering or bothering you, a problem you're dealing with at home or at work, or a situation you've been avoiding. Because 45 minutes from now, you're going to have the tools you need to resolve that problem once and for all. That's pretty cool, right? Well, I know this technique works because I've personally used it to gain deep insight into myself, strengthen my relationships, and grow my business significantly. And I'll share my story with you later in the class. You're also going to meet the inventor of this powerful tool, my friend and colleague, Kathleen Seeley, who recently sat down with me to explain how it works and walk you through the 5-step process of implementing it in your life. So not only will you be using this tool to solve a specific problem today, you'll be able to use it over and over to respond to any challenges or any sticky situations in your life in a way that delivers the results you want. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what you're about to learn. If you've ever read my books or attended any of my seminars or events, you're probably familiar with the formula E plus R equals O. It's the foundation of everything I teach. The event plus your response to it is what determines your outcomes in life. And Kathleen's powerful process gets into the gap between the E and the R, between the event and the response. Because what happens in that space after the event, but before your response, is what determines what kind of response you make and the outcome you'll get as a result. And that's where all your power lies. Now, Kathleen's tool allows you to shine a light in that gap so that you can understand why you respond in the way that you do, and then change your response to finally get the outcomes you want. So if you sometimes feel like you're not fully in control of your thoughts and actions, if you find yourself being triggered by certain situations or people, or if you find it difficult to make the changes you need to make to create better outcomes in your life, I think you're going to find this masterclass with me and Kathleen very valuable. Because we're going to show you how to take back your personal power from whatever has been blocking you from making wiser decisions and showing up fully as your best self. Now also, be sure to stick around until the very end, because Kathleen and I have an exciting announcement to share. We're going to be co-hosting a workshop together in February in Lake Las Vegas. And if you find today's masterclass helpful, you should definitely join us for this upcoming 3-day event. Kathleen and I are going to take you on a very powerful deep dive into the subconscious drivers that shape your beliefs, guide your behavior, and determine how you experience the world around you, so you can change your experience and create better outcomes in your life. You'll learn how to see the world from a different perspective and come up with new solutions that gets results. And the insight you gain will make it so much easier for you to show up fully as your authentic self and cultivate more open, collaborative, and fulfilling relationships with people. You'll also learn how to make wiser choices based on what you really want, not what you think you want, so you can experience more joy and fulfillment in everything you do. I guarantee that attending this event is one of the best things you can do to make sure 2019 is really a remarkable year for you. And if you are one of the many BTS or Train the Trainer grads who have told me that you want to spend more time learning from Kathleen because you've been so blown away by what she's taught us, you are going to love this event. Kathleen and I are both excited to take you deeper into this powerful, life-changing work. So enjoy today's session, and be sure to download the handout and put Kathleen's process into action, and then stick around to learn more about our upcoming workshop together in February. It's going to be phenomenal. All right. Now let's get into the gap with Kathleen and discover the secret source of your personal power. Hi everyone, Jack Canfield here, and we're here with a special webinar. I have a special guest today, Kathleen Seeley. She's one of our experts that we work with at the Canfield Training Group. She has her own company called Massively Human Leadership, and she is working all around the world doing amazing seminars, going to Dubai next year, yes, and starting to work in the Middle East, possibly Lebanon. She's worked in Sweden, all over Canada, United States, and she works with us in our Train the Trainer program. She's helped me design both the online and the live version of the program, constantly updating that as we go. And she shows up live and helps me coach the people through the work. And she's also worked with our company and literally bringing a technique we're going to share today with you, which is new, which is very powerful. It's very simple, but it's very powerful, and it doesn't take a long time, and it can literally transform your life. So I've asked her to join us today to give you this tool, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how it applies, and we're also going to share with you about an upcoming workshop at the end of this that we're really excited about. That this will just be one thing we'll be doing in that seminar. Let me give you a little bit of more background about Kathleen. And before I do that, actually, there is a PDF download. If you haven't already downloaded it, you can get the link in the, is it in the chat box?
It's in the chat, yeah.
In the chat, and download that and print it out. You'll want to use that afterwards. It becomes a resource that will give you the steps to what we're going to be teaching you to do today. And also, I would encourage you to take notes as we go along. So if you need something to write with, go ahead and get that real quick. And you can type notes, whatever you want to do, but you'll want to take notes. And you'll be able to watch this later too. I'm sure you'll be able to do that as well. So this is a little bit on Kathleen. I mentioned she's a speaker, a consultant, a trainer, all coach, works with people and individuals in terms of teams and the corporations, with management groups, and also works with individuals in their coaching practice, teaching balanced, I love this, balanced, sustainable success. So we have success that doesn't get our life out of balance, and also it's sustainable over time. She works with building leadership capacity and creating sustainable values-driven cultures in corporations. And she is also the author, co-author with me of a chapter in my book, The Success Principles, Be a Leader Worth Following. She's an adjunct professor at George Washington University. She teaches in our Breakthrough Success program. Do you ever have time off?
Well, it doesn't seem like it, does it?
You're really busy. And on a personal note, she's just a really good friend because she's so much value to my life personally, and relationships with me and my employees, and also in our company. So basically, let's jump in here. The reason we're talking to you today is that, and the reason I've asked her to do this is I've been teaching forever. If you worked with me, you know I teach this thing called E plus R equals O. Take 100% responsibility for your life. It is the foundation upon which everything else I teach works, because everything else is a response that successful people use to be more successful in life. So for those of you who may not be familiar with E plus R equals O, let me just give you like a 1-minute masterclass on this. E plus R equals O. Event occurs in your life. Then you have a response to that event. The response can either be what you think, what you imagine, or what you do or say, your behavior. And then you have an outcome. And whenever you don't like the outcomes you're getting, or you want a different outcome, you've got to change your response to the events that are occurring in the world. These are neutral events that occur. The economy occurs, your boss occurs, the sales happen or don't happen, your spouse comes home angry, someone forgets your birthday. There are all these different events that occur. And then we respond to them, and then we get an outcome. And so obviously the most important part of our power is to take charge of our responses. If we're not getting what we want, to change the response until we actually get what we want to be experiencing. The reason I asked Kathleen to come is she's been doing this great work. And this technique we're about to teach you, or she's about to teach you, is really what's happening between the gap between the E and the R. It's easy to say you have an event and then you have a response, but are there things that occur that we can make finer distinctions about between the E and the R, so that you can become more conscious, and instead of having a reaction, which is a conditioned response, something you're not even thinking about, often controlled by your beliefs, some of which are known, some of which are subconscious, you can get more conscious and make better conscious intentional choices to produce the quality of life that you want, both in your relationships, at work, in relation to money, in relationship to your health, all of these things which you wouldn't be able to do if you were not aware. So I'm going to turn this over to you a little bit and say, tell us about this process and why it's so valuable. I know it's valuable, but I want you to teach it to my students and
Okay.
our followers.
Thanks, Jack. Well, as you know, you sparked this process that I created about tapping into the gap between the event and the response, because it's a great idea. E plus R equals O. It makes a lot of sense and it has had a profound impact on my life. But what I recognize with my clients and in my own life is how do I actually pause? How do I take back my personal power and consciously create the responses that will create the outcomes I want? So I created this method or this process to help you get, I call it getting in the gap. All of our power lies in that gap between the E and the R. And I began to focus my attention on figuring out how to tap into this power and finding a way really to freeze time or to allow us to hold space to become aware of our reactions and create more mindful responses to the events in our life. So again, Jack, as you mentioned, that focus led me to create this 5-step method that, if used, can bring awareness of our habitual responses. And then we can question if they're serving us.
So before you unpack this at a deeper level and have them do the process, let's talk about an example of some person you've worked with or some person in your seminars that shows the value of this. So people can go, yeah, I see the value of that. I want to learn how to do that. Buddy.
So I'm going to give a personal example of what happened to me as a trainer, because what we're going to learn is I have stories and you have stories, and sometimes our stories collide. But really, sometimes if we're able to talk about what's going on, we can get to a deeper place and really build a stronger relationship. So as you mentioned, I work with leadership teams, and I work with them very intensely over a 9-month period. And I will do group sessions and then one-on-one coaching. And there was this one particular team that I was working with who had one particular leader who wasn't responding to the work. He was, I would say he was resisting very well.
To say the least.
To say the least. And this, he wasn't engaging in the one-on-one coaching. He wasn't participating. And on our second group session, I just noticed that there was so much tension in the room. I had to address it, because sometimes we need to address what's going on. And I said to him, what's going on with you? There's something going on. And he said, nothing. I'm fine. Nothing. He was really pushing back. And I said, I just sense that something's up. It feels like it's getting in the way. And he goes, nothing's wrong. And I said, I think there's something up. And he goes, I just don't like you. And I instinctively, I don't even know where it came from. And I said, well, sometimes I don't like me either. And I said, can you tell me more about that? And he said, no, I don't want to talk about it. I said, no, let's why is it that you don't like me? What's the story he had running? I wanted to know his story. And he said, well, I just think that women should be at home with their kids. So I probed deeper. And at one point in the session, I just decided to let it go. And then, wouldn't you know it, he calls me up and says, I'm ready to engage in a coaching conversation. So when we started talking in the coaching conversation and we went back to that event, that neutral event that happened in the training, what was true for him, he just broke down. He said, my wife is going back to work and I'm really worried that she's going to leave me. I'm really concerned that she's going back to work. So he had a story going on, and I triggered that in him. So I was able to talk him through by unpacking the story and suggesting that he have a conversation with his wife to tell him, first truth first is I'm really worried about you going back to work and that's going to impact our relationship, and have an open, honest conversation. So he was able to get behind his story, and instead of go home and be angry at his wife, he was able to build a relationship with his wife.
Didn't you tell me too that his boss was also a woman?
Oh, that's another part of the story. His boss was a woman who had 3 young children. So it was almost, I could have created a story that he didn't like women. I could have gone there, but I didn't. Thankfully, because it had nothing to do with me. And oftentimes we run these stories in our head. We have in our thinking, we think we know what's going on with someone else, or we decide what it means, and we take action on a story that may or may not be true.
And I think the value of this is that not only was he able to go home and talk to his wife and have an honest conversation and say, my story that I've been telling myself is if you go to work, I'm going to lose my wife. And then he was also able to start seeing his boss as a real human being too, and be able to relate to her more, right, as opposed to being angry at her because he was afraid of his wife. So it had impact on the job, his ability to be coached, and also his relationship.
Yeah, and with her, because she also, we oftentimes, I work with a lot of executive females, women who are trying to work on that balance, home work-life balance. I have kids at home. I have this job that really stimulates me. And there's this internal struggle because we have a story about what a good mom does, what a good leader does. And if we run these stories, oftentimes it can create a great deal of tension and frustration. And we can behave in ways that don't serve us. I can give you another personal example.
Sure, go
Back
ahead.
when I was married and working on the road this very same time, which was a period of tremendous personal growth for me. I remember before I would go on a trip, I would make sure the house was in order, everything was clean, everything was organized, and then I would come back from my trips, and the house would be like it was a bomb, and I would come home and just go after my husband, and I wasn't pleasant to be around. I wouldn't want to be married to me. And one day, I noticed I was coming home. I was particularly frustrated, and I go in the house, and it's a mess. And then I was able to stop myself because I just learned how to do this. I'd learned how to stop and notice what was going on in my body and notice the tension. And I felt, you know what? What is it that I really want in this situation? I want shalom in the home. And is what I'm doing going to get me what I want? And it wasn't. So I said to my husband, can I come home again? And he looked at me and said, whatever, okay. So I left, and I sat in my car, and I really said to myself, what's going on? What's really happening here? And I was able to take a situation and figure out, what could we do to make it better? What do I want? I wanted a clean house to come home to. He wasn't, through 19 years of marriage, that never happened. So what did I do? I decided to hire a cleaning lady and solve that problem.
So what was the story you were telling yourself, though, before that was making you so upset?
Well, the story I was telling myself is I'm insignificant. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't value me. He's lazy, and it created all kinds of feelings.
If he loved me, he would.
If he loved me, he would. You know, my love language is acts of service. He wasn't performing acts of service,
Right.
but I never actually told him that's what I wanted. So
Right.
there's another learning in there.
Right.
But what I was doing wasn't getting me what I want. And the fifth sort of step in this process is to really look at your behavior to say, is what I'm doing right now in the moment going to get me what I want?
Mm-hmm.
And if we can tap into that moment when we start to feel the heat or that reaction, that emotional reaction to whatever's happening in your body, and stop and say, what's happening here? I like this, I don't like this. And say, could I change my story to create a different outcome?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, again, as you were talking about, is tapping into the space between the event and the response. All our personal power lies there.
So I want to ask you a question, because I'm just sitting here in the mind frame of the viewer. You talk about a neutral event. Obviously, we know what that means. But if someone says, my boss just fired me, that doesn't feel very neutral,
True.
you know,
That's
or
true.
we just had an accident, or my son just broke my $5,000 vase I just bought, whatever. But the idea that the event is just something that happened.
Right.
It's meaningless until we assign meaning
That's
to
right.
it.
That's right.
That's what you mean by neutral event.
That's what I mean by a neutral event. And how we assign meaning to that event is really based on our past experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on what we know. So we have within us, when a situation occurs, a specific amount of stories that we can come up with
Mm-hmm.
to make sense of the situation, to take action. But if we're willing to stop time, we can think of new stories and new explanations. For example, if you hear a loud cracking noise, you might think, oh, someone slammed the door, or the vase fell off the fireplace.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else might go to the ground because it sounds like a gunshot.
Mm-hmm.
They have a different frame of reference for their story.
Sure.
So we bring all ourselves into those quote neutral events,
Right.
and we decide what it means. And if we're willing to stop and check in on ourselves and say, you know, what is it about this that's causing so much energy, positive energy or negative energy, we can ground ourselves more fully, and we can take clear, kind, and fearless action to get more of what we want.
Cool. So talk about now, let's go and unpack, what is this process? What are the steps? How do we go through it?
Okay, the first step in this 5-step process is to identify the event. The second step is to describe the story you created as a result of the event. The third step is to identify a feeling that your story created. The fourth step is to then describe the action you took as a result of your story. And the fifth and final step is to examine your behavior and to see if what you're doing is going to get you closer or further away from what you want.
Hi there. I'd like to step in here for a minute. Before you get started on using this 5-step process yourself, Kathleen is about to ask you to identify the situation you'd like to resolve with it. I want you to consider your life and think about the problems, challenges, or conflicts you're dealing with in your life right now. Maybe there's a difficult conversation you've been putting off having. Maybe you recently got into an argument with someone, or maybe you're always finding yourself getting triggered by a family member's or colleague's behavior. Or maybe there's an event coming up that you're worried about or nervous about. Or a recent situation you've experienced where you acted in a way that left you feeling unhappy or dissatisfied with yourself. So take a moment right now to choose the situation you'd like to resolve. And I encourage you to pick one that's going to have a significant positive impact on your life once it is resolved. Something that's going to liberate you from a lot of the stress or anxiety that you might be dealing with. Let's dive back into the training with Kathleen.
Before you use this process, you're going to have to first identify what situation you'd like to work through. So take a moment and on your handout, just describe the situation you would like to use this process with. Give it 4 or 5 bullet points. Just take a minute now and write it out. Now, the next step is to unpack the situation, to write out what the facts of the situation are. And facts are observable, something you can record on a videotape or something that you heard. Oftentimes we confuse facts with the story. So what we want to do is just go back to that. What's that old detective show? Just the Facts, Ma'am?
Yeah.
We might be dating ourselves here.
Yeah,
it's possible.
I know the show. Sergeant Friday, what is his name? I don't remember.
So just writing down the facts of the event, that, remember, it is a neutral event. And the next thing that
Dragnet. It was called Dragnet.
There we go.
Okay,
Dragnet.
good.
We had to close that loop, didn't we?
I did.
All right. So we write down all the facts of the event. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like by sharing with you how I broke down the situation I shared with you about my husband. The event: I was scheduled to be away from the home for 2 consecutive weeks. Both our sons had scheduled hockey practices during the week. Our oldest son had a hockey tournament one of the weekends I was scheduled to be out of town. Before I left, I cleaned the house, I stocked the fridge, and left a list of things I wanted my husband to get done while I was away. I came home after 2 weeks away. The laundry was not done, the kids' toys were scattered around, the floors were not washed, and there were molding vegetables in the fridge. Those are facts. All of those things you could see, observe, or videotape. The next thing we do is we write out, what is the story I've created based on these facts? What's the narrative? So for example, my story that I created from my neutral event was, my husband is lazy. He doesn't do anything he's asked. I'm out earning the money and he's doing nothing. I work harder than him. All he does is play with the kids. He's the fun dad. I have to be the disciplinarian and organize everything. If he really loved me, he'd have this stuff done. So now what I'd like you to do is write down the story that you created based on those neutral facts you identified in box 1. Okay, now in the third box, you're going to identify your feeling. And remember, a feeling is just one word. So, for example, in my situation, I felt disrespected, I felt unheard, I felt unloved. Now, in the fourth box, you're going to identify what action you may have taken if you're talking about a situation that happened in the past, or the action you're thinking of taking. Like that was when I came home and I had these feelings and I yelled at him and I told him he was a lazy slob. What action did you take or do you want to take? Now, finally, review those four boxes and think about what is it that you really want. And in that bottom box that underlies all those four boxes, think about what is it that you really want in the situation. And then is what you're doing going to get what you want? For example, for me, what I really wanted was peace. I wanted to feel respected. I wanted a clean house. I wanted to have fun with my kids. So when I ask myself, is what I'm doing going to get me what I want? And is my story true? I recognize that I was clearly reacting and not mindfully responding. So take a moment and reflect on the four boxes and decide for yourself, what is it that you really want from this situation? And when you think about what you really want, look at your action or the action you were thinking of taking and ask yourself, is this action going to get you closer to what you want or move you further away? Okay, so now you've done it. I hope you found this process effective. Remember, this is how it works. You identify the event, you recognize your story, that's a story you're telling yourself, discover the feelings your story triggered in you, and understand how that feeling determined your action. Then you ask yourself, did my action, or will the action I'm thinking about taking, give me the experience I desire? So that's how you hit the pause button and give yourself the time and space you need to get clear on what's driving you and consciously choose a response that will give you a better outcome. So I encourage you to use this simple 5-step process whenever you find yourself getting triggered by other people or events or acting against your own better judgment and self-interest, or when you have to deal with an uncomfortable conversation or a sticky situation that's preventing you from experiencing more joy, harmony, and abundance in your life. So my 5-step process works because when you're able to respond more thoughtfully and effectively, you'll find it so much easier to get the results you want in your life. We're here to get you off mindless autopilot and turn you into the conscious architect of your own life. Let's talk about how we use this work with your relationship with Patty. Tell them who Patty is.
Well, Patty's the president of my company. She's been my business partner for 25 years. And, we've had a lot of great success together. We've also had our places where we bumped up against each other. And you were very valuable in helping us unpack that bumping up and get through it using this process we've just been talking about. And, Patty would come to me and she'd have some new idea. And I'd my story was, oh my God, here we go again. I'm going to be overwhelmed. I'm not going to be able to do this well. There's not enough time. She wants it done by now. She comes up with the ideas. I have to implement them.
Yeah.
And, so then I would get angry. I sometimes might just disappear, go to my office. I'd be grumpy for the next week, probably. Every time I saw her, I might have tried to avoid her. Just like, oh, maybe if I avoid her, I won't have to do this. And I was feeling resentful, overwhelmed, scared, maybe angry. So yeah, that was going on for me. And I'm sure for her, as I learned doing the process with you, what was going on for her was that she brings this idea. It's just a neutral event. Here's an idea. We should probably do this. We can make some money or help some people or whatever. And for me, for her, it was probably like, Jack doesn't respect my ideas. He doesn't value me. He doesn't see that I'm just trying to help out here. And, probably again, this is never going to happen. I'm never going to get the appreciation I deserve. Right. And so then she would defend herself, and then she would go away, and then we'd avoid each other, and nothing got nothing got done.
So nothing got done. Here's the key. Up until that point, when before you were introduced to this process, what would happen is you'd spend time in your office being angry. Patty would also be in her office angry and frustrated, but nothing was moving forward.
Right.
However, when we talked about it, we broke it down. What we were able to see is you both want the same thing. At the end of the day, you want to actualize your vision. You want to share your work with the world, but you also wanted to feel like it was doable.
Right.
And she wanted acknowledgement for all these, because Patty really is the rainmaker. I mean, she really is she brings all the ideas, but sometimes it can feel overwhelming for you. So recognizing that you both bumped up against each other in these scenarios, and they were happening, not all the time, but when they happened, it really stalled the progress.
Right.
And when we used this process, we were able to go deep enough to see what values of yours were being bumped up against. And hers was a value of competence. Patty is really, she's really competent. And when you challenge her, it was bumping up against her, well, maybe I'm not. It was kind of rubbing up against her own insecurities. And for you, it's about excellence. And in order to be excellence, it takes a lot of time. So you're already feeling overwhelmed and you haven't even heard the idea. And she's already feeling discounted and she hasn't even got to explain the idea. So what happens is you're avoiding each other. And when you were able to sit down and talk about, hey, this is what's up with me. First truth first is, when you bring me a new idea, I feel overwhelmed. And she said to you, well, the first truth first for me, Jack, is when I bring you an idea and you do your thing, I feel discounted. So is there a new way that we can engage in a conversation that I can bring a new idea and you don't get pull back right away? We can engage in the idea. We're not necessarily committing to it, but can we find a way to have a conversation without all the heat?
Right.
So what that's done is saved you time. It saved you frustration. You've made more money,
Yeah, absolutely.
More shalom in the home, if we should say, right?
If there's a Yiddish word for peace that rhymes with business.
Yeah. and it's really simple. Mm-hmm. It's really simple. If you think about the times that you're really plugged into something, if you take a moment and instead of react, as Jack said, oftentimes we're operating in reaction mode, and take the time to respond in a way that really is in alignment with your deeply held values and what you really want in the scenario, then you can get more of the outcomes that you desire. But sometimes we just go on autopilot. We forget that we're in charge of our life. I remember when you introduced me to this concept, E plus R equals O, it blew my mind because what I realized is I was blaming so many people for the conditions and circumstances of my life. And I learned from you is that, oh, wait a minute, if I created the outcomes, I can respond in a different way and get more of what I want. So I focused my attention and all my work on the gap between the E and the R and created this process. And it helps people. People, even in Breakthrough to Success a couple months ago, remember Rick, who stood up and said, I used Kathleen's process last night.
Right.
And
Share that story.
he
It's
says,
powerful,
I think it saved my marriage. So what happened was this couple who were at Breakthrough to Success, in the morning, he woke up and he was flustered. He got up late and forgot his workbook. So he immediately blamed his wife for it. And they had some tension. And she went into her old story, walking on eggshells, feeling like I do nothing right. It's my responsibility to take care of his book. And they were having a lot of tension. And suddenly he then said, I realized what Kathleen taught me the day before, and I sat in it and I reflected. And I said, is it, my story is that it's her responsibility to take care of my stuff. And I realized it's not her responsibility, it's mine. So in a moment, he said, I transform my negative energy at her into a more loving, accepting relationship, because I realized it's not her responsibility. And she noticed it so much that she wrote me a letter thanking me for that transformation that he had in that moment in the morning.
He said, I went through the 4 boxes in about like a minute and a half.
Yep. It's a quick process. Mm-hmm. It's a quick process. In the beginning, you got to write it all down, because we have to recognize sometimes we're talking about our story and we think it's a fact and we get confused. So that's why I highly encourage you to take the time to break your story up into event, all the neutral facts, the story that you created based on the facts, and then identify the feelings and then separate any action you took or plan to take. And then just review it and stop and think, is this going to get me what I want? Is this behavior serving me? And in that bottom box, you can write down what action you're going to take to create the outcome you most desire.
So this process is so powerful. And I know it's worked in families, it's worked for parents, it's worked for managers, it's worked in relationships and so forth. So give us some other examples of how you've seen this work for people.
Okay, just recently I was working with the senior leadership team. And the most senior person in the room is a woman who had a 3-year-old daughter. And she showed up in the morning and she was really stressed. She was feeling, something wasn't on with her. So we did a check-in, and we used this model for the check-in. And what was happening was she had gone home the night before, a long day at work, went home the night before, bought her daughter some McDonald's and put her in front of the TV to watch Powderpuff Girls or some cartoon. So then she was feeling guilty about it. So the event was she had an extra long day at work. She picked up McDonald's on the way home. She then turned the video on, put her daughter in front while she decompressed for her day. But the story she created was, I'm not a good mom. Good moms make their kids fresh food every day. Good moms don't let their kids watch TV for 3 hours in the evening. Good moms spend time with their 3-year-old daughter. So she had this whole story running. And then I said, well, tell me how you feel about that. She goes, I feel incompetent. I feel guilty. I said, you feel guilty. You feel incompetent. So what action did you take? She said, well, I let my daughter watch the show and eat McDonald's, and I just felt bad all night. I said, so is there another way? Could you turn that around? Is there another story you could tell yourself? So we began to look at guilt, and she has a lot of guilt. And I said, well, you were feeling guilty because you had a rough day at work. What if you changed your story? What do you think she changed her story to, Jack?
I'm gonna let you tell us.
What do you think? Well, what I was trying to get is that she decided that good moms cook for their kids, except for when they've had really long days at work and they're really tired and they need to go home and decompress. And you taught me that. You taught me how to reframe the story. So I popped it into my model to help people write a new story. We have lots of stories about what good moms do, what good wives do, what good brothers do, what good sisters do. In that very same workshop, what that did is it sparked another conversation with another one of the senior leaders. These are people of high level positions who just have real life stuff. They're just massively human. in their whole, they're human all the time. And he said he feels so guilty because he's one brother out of five who's very successful. So he feels a lot of guilt about his success. So what he does, he feels guilty. He has a lot of success. He has a story that good brothers don't exceed the success of their other brothers. He feels guilty. So what does he do? He gives all his money away. So we unpacked that. And I said, is there any way that you could perhaps be successful and not feel guilty about it? You made choices, you made different choices. So these spark conversations, and these are people who work together at a very high level, who dropped into this place, who they connected at a very deep personal level. And what that does is it brings us closer to each other. And whether you're in a team, at home, at church, if you can find a way to connect people from a deeper place, to really get in touch with what's going on inside of you, to stop time between the event and the response, you can really drop into deeper relationships. And you know what? The key to success is our relationships. Success is a team sport. We can't do it alone. So if I keep getting in the way with my own stories, I can't connect with you and we can't create a better future. Just like you and Patty. If you weren't able to have that conversation, to know where you're coming from, you couldn't have gone to a deeper place. And now when that shows up, you're in touch with it and you can talk about it. You can say, I need a break. Or you can say, that's just me going off in my story again. You don't have to get swept away. That's the key to this work, is if you know who you are and if you're really grounded in your values, when things come up, we sometimes we do what I call, we go into a retrograde. We go backwards. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had a situation where you just go, oh, I thought I was further than this? I just call it a retrograde. It gives us an opportunity to stop and look at ourselves and say, wow, I've come a long way and I still have somewhere to go. But really, it allows us to check in. Where are we? And where do we want to be? And if we're clear on what we want, we don't get tossed like a tumbleweed. We can realign with ourselves more quickly if we know who we are. That's why I think the values work is also so important.
I agree.
If you're wondering when to use this tool, here's a suggestion. When something really triggers you, when you're plugged in, if you've set a goal and you're too afraid to ask for help to support you in the goal, you need to look at what story you're telling yourself that gets in the way. And here's the biggest clue, that if you're lost in a story, if you start to try to enroll other people in your story, that's when you know you probably have some work to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So we'd like to hear from you guys. Like, obviously, you've just taught them a very valuable tool. And I'd say it's valuable because it's helped me. It's helped our company. It's obviously helped all your clients, helped you in your relationships and your life. And so if this has been valuable for you, we'd like to hear. And you can post below if you've gotten value. Like, maybe you got in touch with the story today. Maybe this is, oh, now I see how I can use this. We just like to know you're out there and that we're giving you value. So go ahead and post something, and it'll be valuable for other people too, to see what you post. So I hope as you've watched us today, you realize we're both committed to making a difference in the lives of others. You've talked about being on the road a lot, working and wanting to help people and corporations and organizations be their best. I spent the last 50 years of my life committed to transforming people's lives, creating lives that people want to live, going from where you are to where you want to be. So we've decided we're going to join forces in a new way than what we've done before, and spend, instead of you just coming in for an afternoon or being part of a workshop, we're going to do a whole workshop together and take this work that Kathleen's developed, integrate it with the work I'm doing, and create a whole new experience for you to take you to the next level, to create the life you want, to be the person you want to be, to not be limited by your stories, your limiting beliefs, your past wounds, but to transcend all that and give you the tools you need, many more than the one you just experienced today, so that you have the capacity to live a conscious, intentional life, to create this sustainable success, the balanced success that you talk about. And we want you to come join us. There's nothing to lose and everything to gain. And we're going to have an amazing time together. And you're going to leave not just with new tools, but you'll leave with an action plan to take the life to the next level. You'll have accountability. You're going to be doing a follow-up group. Talk about that.
We're going to have a 3-month follow-up group called Evolve to Excellence, where we'll keep your work going forward, and we'll have live chats will help push you through those things that come up and make sure that you actualize your plan.
So we'd love you to join us in Las Vegas. And all the details are below. You can read about it. Just click on the link and you'll find out everything you need to know about this workshop. It's 3 days that can change your life forever. Think about that. If you could invest $3 and have $1 million come back to you, that would be amazing. And that's really what we're talking about, investing 3 days of your life and having the results be something that's so magnificent that just like the people that come out of our seminars and the works you do, the work you've done with our company, because you were doing these table talks at our Breakthrough to Success seminar, and everyone was saying, can you do a whole seminar on this? I need to bring my mother. I need to bring my family. I need to bring my kid, my team, my boss, whatever. And that was part of what decided us to do this, right?
Yeah. Because we remember we decided to do a test at Breakthrough to Success this year. I spent a half a day sharing my work in these processes with the group, and the feedback was overwhelming. Overwhelming. So we said, hey, let's do it.
Let's do it. So we invite you to join us and to take your life to the next level. It's that simple. We hope you'll come join us. And there's nothing to lose. We'll give you your old life back guarantee. If you don't like what you got, I promise you your life's going to be much better.
We'll see you there.